There you are, stepping through what feels like an endless stretch of porcelain tile and still water. Light pours in from somewhere you can't quite see, so bright it washes out the edges of the room. It almost feels natural, but there's this gnawing feeling that won't go away. Like the memory of a place you've been before, only slightly out of place, a little corrupted. The room keeps inviting you forward, one quiet step at a time, until you realize you're not exploring anymore. You're lost, and you have been, for hours. Which is a horrible thing to realize in a place that you really don't understand. This place sits here, bright and quiet, pretending that it has absolutely nothing to explain, and that is when the Backrooms starts working. I think the easiest way to compare this feeling to something that I grew up with is SCP. Now, SCP and the Backrooms are not the same thing, and this is not an SCP video, I swear. But, in a similar fashion, SCP was always about the entities with me, the certain object or the certain creature, the thing you weren't really supposed to understand until you read a file that told you everything you need to know. What does this SCP do? What rule does it follow? Most importantly, what happens when somebody breaks that rule? Backroom gives that kind of same need-to-know feeling, but it's just more in a physical place. Instead of finding impossible things one file at a time, suddenly the environment itself becomes the entire possibility. And that's when my thoughts began to take shape for this video, because I think that the Backrooms is quite literally the perfect backroom, or fuck. The Backrooms just might be the perfect horror sandbox. Now, I could grill you with reasons why, but for clarity's sake, I divided it up into 3 different parts. You've got 1, the level, 2, the thing that lives inside of it, and then 3, the rules that change how both of the first 2 act. But to top it all off, there's actually also a 4th piece. It's the piece that keeps the Backrooms feeding itself. With all of that said, let's start with the first, maybe the most important piece when it comes to the Backrooms, the level. This is a game called Pools. Pools has a really unique perspective on the Backrooms. It takes one of the more well-conceptualized levels, the pool rooms, and pretty much turns it into a walking simulator. To be honest, going into this, I really didn't expect a whole lot. I'm the kind of guy that needs shit to be happening at all times to be able to keep my attention, so I didn't really expect to get into this game. I actually launched the game with the intent of just getting B-roll for this video. That was it. But in the same action of trying to get B-roll, I ended up playing through half of this game in one sitting. Pools was like the perfect game to use as an example for what I'm talking about with levels. The feeling of, I need to know what's next. You start the game, your character picks up the camera, and you walk. Which, I mean, I kind of get how that sounds. Half of you are probably ready about the fucking dip because this guy's going to talk about a walking simulator for the next 10 minutes. And also, to that point, you could not catch my steadily fattening ass on a walk at any willing point of the day. So, how is this going to be any better? I was skeptical at first because the first level in this game had a very familiar take on the pool rooms. Which one is it? Pool? As you go further into the game and you start to get used to what's surrounding you, you start to realize how genuinely impactful the noise in this game is. Or, at some times, the lack thereof. You're walking for a really long while, listening to water, the absurdly heavy weight in your footsteps, and of course what the fuck was that? Pools has this insane ability. It starts to understand the timing of when you get acclimated to the environment that is making you walk through, and so it changes something ever so slightly so that where you're at feels almost entirely different. Once I heard that thing, my paranoia went through the fucking roof. And at the same time that my anxiety started to rise, I also started to see these grander and grander room designs. Some of them defying physics. Some of them with slides that they, of course, let you go down. I know I've probably killed my point by now, but look at the effect that adding a single color to tile does to this game. No, not that one. Well, no, that one's okay, but that's not it. Oh yeah, it's this one. How the fuck did I end up here? I remember telling myself, well, you've got enough footage now, so let's move on to the next game. And then I completed another level and a half anyways. The possibilities of these endless landscapes is just a curiosity generator in itself. The fact that what my eyes were seeing could change in the matter of rounding a corner was always going to be enough for me to keep moving forward. And that's some pretty powerful shit, because that's the first part that I'm talking about. That's only the first part. If these levels carry so much weight by themselves, just imagine what happens when we add entities into it.
I bring peace.
Dude.
Now imagine we took our experience with pools and we ramped up the fear tenfold. We fall into the back rooms, but this time there are things trapped down here with us. You've imagined it? Great. Are you also imagining brown streaks running down the slides because we've completely shat ourselves? That's exactly what would happen. But through our beautifully constructed, shit-ridden thought experiment, we've discovered the second piece of the Backrooms sandbox. The monster. I think just saying there are living things down here with us is enough. You and I both know the first thing that we're going to ask.
Okay.
What?
I think we gotta go down there.
Down the
right?
very ominous hallway.
We got to. No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't.
The levels create the where am I, and the monster creates the what else is in here. Although not as visually striking as our pool's example, Escape the Backrooms pretty much wears this idea like a badge of honor. 33 independently designed levels with 23 different entities spread across them. Sometimes they appear alone, sometimes they're in groups, but almost every time you enter a new area, the same thing runs through your head. What horrible thing is waiting for me here? What does it look like? What does it do? And of course, when is it going to kill me? As you progress through the game, you slowly start to develop your favorite and least favorite monsters. For example, this is a wasp. Apparently, it's a wasp the size of me. Fuck this wasp, and fuck all of his wasp friends. I vividly remember every... Oh, hell no. Dude, I shit you not. As soon as I said fuck this wasp, look at that thing. That thing came out of the woodwork to kill me. As I was trying to say before, I vividly remember every encounter that I had with this thing. Mainly because I despised it so much. Oh my god! I'm about to piss myself. It's something interesting that I find about moving through the backrooms and discovering monsters. At first, you're desperate to learn what you're trapped with. Then, once you finally encounter it, you start to personally index it. You remember which creatures scared you, which ones annoyed you, which ones you thought looked cool, or, in some cases, ones that you would happily erase the existence of. To me, discovering these monsters and learning how they work can be equally as rewarding as going through the environment itself. Every entity becomes a sub-mystery of the larger mystery of where you're at. Like, an empty hallway is already scary when you don't really know where it ends up, but when you know that there's something also down that hallway, it makes it 500 times worse. Every corner you round may become an encounter with it. Every sound starts to mean something. Every place is somewhere where something can just sit there and watch you. At least that's how I imagine it in my head. It's a really twisted form of entertainment, especially if you have imagination, but that's why putting monsters in the back rooms makes it such a solid second piece to the horror sandbox. And it's like I said, the level makes you wonder what's around the corner, but the monster makes you afraid to fuck around and find out. I do want to mention though, as somebody who has played many a Backrooms games, I do sometimes get extremely bored with the same things being recycled. I think this is what a part of my inspiration for the video was, because what I've been talking about is what I feel like that Backrooms has the opportunity to become. Having people explore outside of the yellow walls and the pools and slides, create something on the other side of the fence that the community has set up so far. And I wanted to mention this now because I think it's a really good transition into the third piece of the sandbox becoming perfect. What do we know about rules? You probably played a game that's had limitations before. Maybe gravity's become 100 times heavier and you can no longer jump. Or, in the latter case, your options open up because there's no gravity at all. Either way, this rule is something that can both impact the environment that you're in as well as the monsters in it. There was a game that I really enjoyed because it went out of the box in the exact way that I've been talking about. It's called Backrooms Lost Runners. And I like this game for a lot of different reasons. It felt like it gave the Backrooms some kind of campaign, almost. It gave you direction in a world that literally has none. A lot of the game pretty much has you turning power on and off via various switches to access the next area. And because you have that goal pulling you forward the entire time, you encounter some pretty unique things and places. Even though these places are technically interesting on their own, they're even more interesting because of the rules that are placed inside of them. Although this is another take on the classic yellow wall Backrooms, I feel like the Lost Runners tried a little harder, I guess. I feel like these rooms are basically stage one of the game starting to implement rules. The atmosphere itself, of course, ignores a lot of different things that would be true in reality. You have impossible structures, of course. You've got anti-gravity zones, and you've got portals that literally take you from one place to the other. And no, that may not be the most exciting thing or most original idea, but it's still something that you start to understand. Like, you have to understand that to be able to progress. It becomes increasingly obvious that these rules are basically defining the limitations of the environment that you're in, what you can or cannot do in it. And then you have monsters like the Smiler. Again, another really oversaturated one. But put him in the dark and give him a rule where he can hear you, and suddenly this version of him is like top 1% of I don't want to be near you.
I was too.
Or, I mean, we can even talk about both the monster and the environment having a rule. You step into a room where the lights are on. As you take a few steps, they turn themselves off. The whatever the fuck these things are can only move when the lights are off. And it gives you this weird inability to predict when the danger is going to come. You can understand the rule, but you can't control it. You know these things can't reach you when the lights are on, but you also don't know when the room's going to turn them off. So now you're suddenly less worried about the monster or the place you're in more than you are worried about the rule that they both abide by. And I think that that's where rules become so important. I was using the Backrooms to explain why rules make horror more interesting, but the entire time, I was basically describing one of the first SCPs that I ever cared about. If you spend any real time going down these internet rabbit holes, you've more than likely heard of this one before. SCP-087, the stairwell. And out of every SCP file that I've ever read or learned about, this might be the cleanest example of everything that I've been trying to talk about this video. Let's start with the level, because SCP-087 is a single setting, a single level. It's described as a unlit staircase, essentially. 13 steps, a landing, a 180-degree turn, and 13 more steps. It's funny, the lore actually signifies that they sent 4 different expeditions down the staircase, and none of them found the bottom. Does that sound familiar? Because it should. It's the exact idea that the Backrooms thrives on so well. Take something completely mundane like our pools example, and just never let it in. The location does all of the work by simply never giving you an answer. It doesn't resolve itself. Then you get SCP-087-1. It's just a face. It's pale, motionless, sitting somewhere below you on the stairs. No mouth, no nostrils, no pupils. It doesn't talk, it doesn't scream, it doesn't go after you. The first time you see it, it basically does nothing but exist. And somehow, in some cases, that's just so much worse than if it just came at you and got it over with. And then, what I feel like is the most interesting part. Any light source brighter than 75 watts just stops working down there. The stairwell pretty much eats it. So even if you show up with the biggest flashlight on the market, a spotlight, the sun, you're only ever going to see about 1.5 feet in front of you the entire time. And here's the part that actually matters to everything that I've been building towards this whole video. That one document written by one anonymous person on some random wiki is a big part of the reason why indie horror games look the way they do today. Somebody made a small game out of this staircase. That game got popular enough that another developer decided to make his own game about it. And then that version of the game got popular enough to where that same developer decided to make an even bigger version on that topic. And that just so happens to be our beloved SCP containment breach, which I mean, it has to be one of the most influential indie horror games that's existed. This is where things start to get a little weird, I guess. You remember that fourth piece that I was talking about in the beginning that I proceeded to not mention after I talked about it? Well, this is it. SCP-087 didn't just inspire a game. That game introduced more people to SCP. Some of those people went and read about SCP files. Some of those people made SCP videos. And the whole point is that they added something new. Backrooms does exactly this. It started with almost nothing. You got one photograph in May 2019. Then somebody wrote a few lines underneath it. They said that if you weren't careful, you could fall out of the real world and end up here. That's why the term no clipping became such a big thing. And that was almost all that people needed. Someone looked at that room and was like, man, I wonder what's beyond that. Someone else was like, man, I wonder what lives there. And somebody, for reasons that I'll never fucking understand, adds a wasp. The setting became a place where thousands of people could add their own little horrible idea. I opened up pools because I need a B-roll, and suddenly I sat there and played it, and now I have a whole video on this. Now, maybe you watch this and decide that you have to play one of these games. Maybe you look up a Backrooms level that you've never heard of. That's the Ouroboros. Ouroboros. That's the Ouroboros. The old image of a serpent eating his tail. It's talking about sustaining yourself through an endless cycle, essentially. Every trip through this ring leaves something behind. A room that wasn't there before, a new monster that wasn't there, a completely different idea of what can and cannot be done. And that freedom is how you end up with games like Pools, Escape the Backrooms, and Lost Runners. None of them feel exactly the same. Pools found itself mainly through environment. The community is the piece that just keeps this generating forever, for free. And that's why the Backrooms is this perfect sandbox for horror games and, I guess, horror alike. Now it has a movie too. It gives us room to disagree and experiment and add something that somebody didn't add the last time. And with that, let's close this out, shall we? We spent this whole video taking the Backrooms piece by piece. Let's put it all together. The level gives you an ever-changing place. The monster adds an uncomfortable danger, and then the rule gives them both depth and complexity. And then we add the final piece of community. It's the reason that there's not just one Backrooms game, there's dozens. It's the reason that SCP has thousands of entries instead of just a single staircase. If you take away the first three pieces, you've still got a decent horror game. But if you take away all four, then it was never made in the first place. So go back to that room for a second. The tile, the still water, the light with no visible source. It still feels wrong, doesn't it? But now you know why. Some anonymous person on some forum at some point within the last 6 years said, you know what? That room needs one more hallway attached to it. And then somebody else said, you know what? That hallway could be scarier. You're standing in the punchline of a joke that a few thousand, tens of thousands of strangers have been building since 2019. So, welcome to the back room. Try not to get too comfortable because it's still under construction.